Hello again and welcome to St Matt's Sunday Club Online. I'm Jane and I'm glad to be with you today as we spend more time exploring about our amazing God. A God who made everything, who loves his people, who never leaves us on our own. A God in whom we can trust because he never changes.
I am the Lord, I do not change. I am the Lord, I do not change. Kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall, but the Lord don't change at all. No, the Lord don't change at all. He keeps every promise and his word is true. What he says, and what he says, he'll do. Listen to him. I am the Lord and I do not change. I am the Lord and I do not change. Kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall, but the Lord don't change at all. No, the Lord don't change at all. He keeps every promise and his word is true. What he says, and what he says, he'll do. Listen to him. I am the Lord and I do not change. I am the Lord and I do not change. Kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall, but the Lord don't change at all. No, the Lord don't change at all.
Now, I wonder if you have any brothers and sisters, and I wonder if you sometimes squabble and argue. Like when you're told to tidy up and your brother goes off to play. It's not fair, he never helps, you moan. Or maybe your sister takes your stuff. That's mine, give it back. Or perhaps there's even a bit of pushing and shoving. He started it, she pushed me. Didn't, did, didn't. Does that sound familiar? I'm afraid most families squabble sometimes, but in our true Bible story today, they do more than just squabble. For our Bible story for the next 3 weeks is about a guy named Joseph, and it all happens a long time ago before Jesus is born, right back at the beginning of the Bible, in the part called Genesis. Now, Joseph is one of God's people, living in the land of Canaan, the land that God had given them. So everything should be fine. But we'll soon see that it is far from well. Joseph lived with his father Jacob and 11 brothers in the land of Canaan. Life should have been good, but they were not a happy family. Joseph, who was one of the youngest, would tell tales on his brothers and get them into trouble with Jacob. And Jacob loved Joseph more than his other sons. Joseph was his favourite, and Jacob gave him a colourful coat. How do you think the others felt about this? That's right, it made the other brothers jealous, and they grumbled about Joseph. But they didn't just grumble, and they didn't just squabble. They hated him. Why should he have the best coat? That little telltale. Now one night Joseph had a dream, and next day he told his brothers. We were all gathering corn into bundles, and when we stacked them up, your bundles of corn bowed down to mine. Well, this made the brothers even more angry. Are you saying we should bow down to you? Are you expecting to rule over us, little brother? Things only grew worse when Joseph told them of another of his dreams. The sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowed down to me, he said. Now the brothers were hopping mad. Do you think we'll bow down to you? And even Jacob wondered what all this could mean. Yes, trouble was brewing in this family. And so one day, when their father was not around, the brothers saw their chance to get even. They made a plan to get rid of Joseph. Let's kill him, some said. But Reuben, the eldest, said, no, let's throw him down this dry well. He hoped to rescue Joseph later and take him back home. So the brothers pounced and grabbed the special coat, and they threw Joseph down the empty well. Ow! Then Reuben went off to tend to some of the sheep. Meanwhile, Joseph sat in the cold and the dark. What was going to happen? Suddenly, some traders came riding by. They were on their way to the land of Egypt. And so another wicked plan came to the brothers. They could make some money and get rid of their pesky brother, they thought. And they sold Joseph to the traders as a slave. They sold their brother and watched as he was led away in chains. Poor Joseph. Now when Reuben returned and discovered what had happened, he was in a real panic. What can I do? What can I tell father? He moaned. The brothers then tore the coloured coat and dipped it in some animal blood. They took it to their father Jacob. Look, we found this. A wild animal must have killed our brother Joseph. They all lied. Jacob was filled with deep sadness and cried and cried. No one could comfort him. Meanwhile, Joseph was on a long journey to Egypt. Well, what a family! Did you notice that no one was behaving well? No one was behaving like they were part of God's family. Joseph was a telltale sneak and a show-off about his dreams. Surely he'd know that that would annoy his brothers. And Jacob had Joseph as his favourite son, which was not a good thing. And the brothers were full of jealousy and hate. Yes, Reuben stopped them from killing Joseph, but he still threw him down a well. And he was the eldest, and so he should have taken charge and said, "Stop this, he's our brother." And later he worried more about himself, about being in trouble with his dad. "What can I do?" he wailed. As the eldest son, he probably thought he would get most of the blame. And they all let their dad believe that Joseph was dead. What a terrible, terrible lie. What a terrible situation. But where was God in this story? Did you notice that God's not mentioned, not once? Does that mean that God didn't care about what is happening? Of course not. In fact, later in the long story of Joseph, we find out what God is thinking. But for now, we can be sure that God is there, even if it doesn't look like it. He is watching and he is working. So have a think. Where might God be at work in this story so far? Well, can you see that he protects Joseph from being killed or left in the well by sending the traders along at just the right moment? It's no coincidence that those traders going to Egypt turn up when they do. God has picked the time. This meant that Joseph is sold and not killed. Well, it's still horrible, of course, but God has used the wicked plan of the brothers to save Joseph. Joseph is alive and he's away from his brothers. Our God is always at work. He is a great big God.
Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. He's higher than a skyscraper, and He's deeper than a submarine. He's wider than the universe and beyond my wildest dreams. And He's known me and He's loved me since before the world began. How wonderful to be a part of God's amazing plan. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. He's higher than a skyscraper, and He's deeper than a submarine. He's wider than the universe and beyond my wildest dreams. And He's known me and He's loved me since before the world began. How wonderful to be a part of God's amazing plan. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hand. One last time. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. And He holds us in His hands. And He holds us in His hands. And He holds us in His hands.
Now, God is at work in Joseph's life, even though he didn't realize it. And this ancient story reminds us that God works even through the bad things that happen. And we know this to be true because in another part of the Bible, we are told, in all things, God works for the good of everyone who loves Him. That's in Romans 8, verse 28. So Joseph's life was filled with ups and downs, good times and bad times. And it's the same for us. Now, your brother is probably not going to sell you as a slave, but we have good times and bad times. Maybe we're having a tricky time at school, or we might be very poorly, or just those times when everything seems to go wrong and we're feeling rubbish. If we trust in God, then God works even through the bad things that happen. He takes the bad things and uses them for our good. Now, sometimes we don't see how that can possibly happen. And sometimes we don't see until a long time after. There was a boy I knew who was picked on at school, and it was a hard time for him for many, many months. But through it all, he trusted God. And the bad time made him stronger inside. And then when he was older, when he was in the sixth form, he had the opportunity to help other children who were being bullied because he knew how they felt. He knew what they were going through. A good thing had come out of something bad. But sometimes the bad things that happen, well, we just can't make any sense of it. When someone we love is very, very ill or dies. And at those times, we must trust God and keep on trusting God. And one day, maybe not until heaven, we will see how God was working. Because in all things, God works for the good of everyone who loves him. Now, they are really helpful words in the Bible. And so we're going to learn them. We're going to have them as the phrase that stays and learn it over the next few weeks. So we'll have the words on the screen and we're going to say it together with some actions to help us. So let's have a go. In all things, God works for the good of everyone who loves him. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. Let's say it again. In all things, God works for the good of everyone who loves him. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. Well, next week we'll try and learn that again and maybe miss out some of the words. Now, of course, Joseph must have been very scared at times. And when difficult things happen, we too can be afraid. So let's have that song from a couple of weeks ago about trusting in God and not being afraid. The words are from Psalm 56. When I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, whose word I praise. In God I trust and will not be afraid. So we'll sing that as our prayer time, remembering that we can trust God in good times and bad times. Trust him with everything, because in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. Let's sing.
I put my trust in you. I put my trust in you. When I am afraid, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise. In God, I trust and am not afraid. In God, whose word I praise. In God, I trust and am not afraid. When I am afraid, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. I put my trust in you. Oh, oh, when I am afraid, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise. In God, I trust and am not afraid. No, oh, oh, in God, whose word I praise. In God, I trust and am not afraid. In God, whose word I praise. In God, I trust and am not afraid.
Well, that's it for now. But next session, we'll find out what happens next when Joseph arrives in Egypt. How will God protect him there? So don't forget to join me and we'll see more of God at work. But until then, take care everyone. God bless you and bye-bye.